And they want to know why young people don't want to take responsibility for things, why they're so depressed, because they can't own anything, because they can't sort of manage money. They're forced to basically live like students until their 40s. That has a huge impact on someone's self-confidence, their want to start a family, get married, all of those things. And the message we're constantly giving is there's nothing here for you in Britain. But at some point, people are going to say, you do realise if you go to Poland, or if you go to Hungary, or if you go to the Czech Republic, living is so much better. And guess what? They haven't culturally vandalised the place either. You know, I think when more and more young people suddenly wake up to the rape of Britain, because that's essentially what it's been over the past 2 decades, they're going to get out.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on. Hi, Wycombe.
Yeah.
I used to live there.
Oh, did you?
I went to university there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, for 3 years.
They had a university there?
Buckinghamshire and Chilterns University College.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to study music industry management. You know, when they suddenly invented loads of shit degrees that you can just go and do? I did the music industry one. I quit in my third year, start my third year. But yeah, so I lived there for 2.5 years. Yes, it's shit. Well, I shouldn't say that. Sorry, because Steve Baker's been on the show.
It's a ghost town, really. I've never seen so many disturbed people with so many vacant premises. And it was, I sort of looked at it and thought, this feels post-apocalyptic.
Well, actually, so we have a lot of vacant premises in Bedford. Yeah. And we've looked into that because we're trying to start businesses there, and the business rates are what kill people. It makes it a non-starter. But the thing you say about High Wycombe is like either side, there's just like a massive hill going into it. And I just used to think the shit would slide down in there and get stuck there, and everyone else, if you had any strength, you got out and you lived in Marlow or Prince's Risborough.
The environs are beautiful. Like everywhere around there is like, this is Poshville.
Yeah.
And you go into High Wycombe and it sounds really nice. It's like, High Wycombe, I'm going to get some tea while I'm there. No, not so much.
Nope.
There's just a lot of weirdos and slightly unhinged people talking themselves and muttering. And
we have that in Bedford.
Do you?
Yeah. I think that's those, like, you get that with these nothing towns that are kind of dying. And
yeah, you have your fair share in Gloucester, where I'm from. In fact, when I used to work in the pubs of Gloucester during COVID, I wasn't working there during COVID, but the pub I used to work in, I knew the landlord.
Can we bring this to the mic in a bit?
Sure.
Just so you're
I
in
was
front
wondering.
of it.
Yeah, there
if you come a couple inches to the side. So it's in front, yeah. There we go.
So the landlord of the pub where I used to work as a student, during COVID, the police came to him and said, look, if you stay open, we won't tell anybody, because it was basically care in the community. All the sort of, once upon a time, there were about 11 asylums in Gloucester, and then they all closed down, and so people are in this sort of daycare situation where they're free to sort of wander, if you will. And working in that pub, we just knew all of them by name. You could sort of tell what time they'd come in by clockwork, their mad conspiracy theories, their bags for life. And during COVID, the police came to the landlord and said, look, please stay open. We won't tell anyone, because it's just somewhere for these people to go. I
think these death of these high streets and towns is one of the saddest parts of, I think you called UK a bit of a basket case at the moment. I agree. I think it's one of the saddest things. I nearly took a lease on this old property on the high street in Bedford. Fell through in the end, but it used to be a hardware store called Golding's, like a famous little property in Bedford. But when I was looking at the history, you see the photos of the high street, these bustling high streets. And our high street now is predominantly fast food, gambling,
vape
charities,
shops, Turkish barbers,
phone repair shops, little mini markets.
Yeah.
It's kind of died. There's a few nice ones people are trying, but it's just like
most of those businesses, though, they're just fronts for money laundering. That's the truth of the matter. Not like, I'm not saying all small businesses, but a lot of the vape shops, a lot of
I've heard the rumour. The
Turkish barbers are, where they go to not just clean hair, but clean money.
I've heard the rumour. I've heard it's true.
Yeah.
Well, we get a lot of charity shops, though, because they don't have to pay the business rates.
Right.
So if you're a charity shop, you don't have to pay the business rates. Right. Therefore, it's just a really obvious indicator where government doesn't understand economics, because I'm not against charity shops, by the way, and them opening up. But there's a signal there. If they can afford to be there because they've got no business rates. Well, if you had no business rates in a town centre, how many other businesses could be there?
Yeah.
How many local businesses?
Right. I walked today from the bottom of Oxford Street, the sort of Selfridges, John Lewis end, and that bit still sort of works like a shopping street. And then you get to the Regent Street Junction, you carry on down, and it's just candy shops and rubbish.
Is that on the way to Selfridges?
on the way coming
back
to you from, it's just candy shops and rubbish. And where I live in London, the whole street now, there are lots of little bits and bobs, and it's just souvenir shops. Every single shop is a souvenir shop. And you think, no one's buying all your souvenirs. Like, this is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's that point stood out. Me and Connor were going through a bit of your Twitter this morning on the way, drive down, and where you referred to the UK as a basket case and people laughing at us. It's actually, it's true. It's a real lived experience. I mentioned to you, last 7 years I've been working in the US doing a podcast. And so I know a lot of people out there, and I get texts almost daily. It's like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
What's happening in the UK? And I don't know about you. I work hard. Yeah. Pay my taxes.
I pay my blimmin' pay my taxes. My gosh.
I think I'm some pretty decent values, and then all we're surrounded with is a crashed economy, rape gangs, people going to prison for free speech, and it's just like, what is happening? I was speaking with a friend about this last night, and we were taking stock of how much tax we both pay and what we get in return. And the UK economy, we're about to go to the IMF for a handout, basically. We're on the verge of bankruptcy. And I say, I pay the highest rate of tax. I've propped up this country to the tune of hundreds of thousands over the course of adulthood. I'm not a big earner, but, they dip their hand in my pocket for about, 45% of what I earn. And I can't get anything in return. I don't use the NHS. I pay for private medical insurance because I don't trust the NHS. But if you do need a GP appointment for a referral, you can't get one. I got no kids, so I don't have any kids in state school. I don't understand what I get. I'm 41 and I still can't get on the housing ladder because, people who live outside of London might find what I'm about to say quite shocking. But if you're earning 100k in London, you're still in shared accommodation out in zone 4 or something. It's, you cannot survive in London. I don't understand when you see all these people living and working here. Where are you? Where are you living? It must just be lots of multiple occupancy accommodation. But you just look at anywhere in and around London, because I've been like, right, I want to get on the housing ladder. And 500k gets you a shoebox somewhere where the commute is going to cost you 40 quid in and out. We've even had that experience in Bedford. So I used to commute in. I commuted in for 7-8 years. Literally worked just over there in Covent Garden. And when I bought my first house, it was 100 grand. And we're talking 20 years ago. We had a look recently for you. What price region are we looking in?
250.
Yeah, to get on the housing ladder. And
in Bedford? In Bedford,
right. Which is it's commuter belt-ish. You can get in 40 minutes to King's Cross. But that's essentially a 2.5 times
it's crazy
increase.
For less rooms.
1.5 times, But the wages haven't gone up.
No.
And we've had a massitive growth in these multi-person occupancy properties, which is essentially a bunch of just box rooms with a shared kitchen, shared bathroom. Yeah. And it's that like managed gradual decline.
And they want to know why young people don't want to take responsibility for things, why they're so depressed, because they can't own anything, because they can't sort of manage money. They're forced to basically live like students until their 40s. And I think that has a huge impact on people's mental health. It has mental health, but it has a huge impact on someone's self-confidence, their want to start a family, get married, all of those things. And the message we're constantly giving is there's nothing here for you in Britain. I was looking last night at Hungary, for instance. In Budapest, you pay, I think it's a flat rate of tax of 15%, no capital gains, no tax on dividends, and a sort of 5-bedroom, beautiful, high-ceilinged villa right in the centre of the city is about £3,000 a month, which is what I pay for a dinky little, falling apart, tiny, minuscule house. And you think, what am I doing here? And I think the more people wake up and realise this, at the moment they might be sort of, crying into their cornflakes and sitting in their slankets, pretending to answer the phone for their dead-end job in whatever house they live in whatever suburb they live in. But at some point, people are going to say, you do realise if you go to Poland or if you go to Hungary or if you go to the Czech Republic, living is so much better. And guess what? They haven't culturally vandalised the place either. It still looks historical. It's clean. It's a high-trust society. Mm-hmm. I think when more and more young people suddenly wake up to the rape of Britain, because that's essentially what it's been over the past 2 decades, they're going to get out. We're going to have that reverse thing we had when
it's happening already, Alex.
Yeah.
People are leaving. We already know that
Yeah.
they're leaving. I think that the weird thing on the tax thing is like I resent how much tax I pay. I mean, I just think it's ridiculous. Especially, I've looked across parts of Eastern Europe and some places. I think is it Bulgaria is like 10% or something. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I've looked across and seen these low rates of tax. But I think I'm pissed off because everything is going to shit. The NHS is virtually unusable. Yeah. We worry about safety in London. I don't wear a watch anymore just because of the safety of London when we come in. Just everything's just going to shit. And I think that's the main issue. I think if we had a culturally good country still and we had rule of law and we valued liberty and freedom, I think I'd resent the tax, but I wouldn't be feeling like I am now.
You go to places outside the M25. My other half lives in Wiltshire and he's got a little place in rural Wiltshire at the moment. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
You leave your front door open. People are sort of in your house sort of saying, are you okay? We haven't seen your lights on for a while, or picking up your parcels for you. And it's just that the properties are beautiful as well. The only issue there is if you've got a thatched property, the insurance you pay on it is ridiculous. And I suddenly thought, when you look at the demographic change that's going to hit Britain really hard, I mean, when you look at the different birth rates, and especially the projected demographic change in Britain is that by 2050, sort of native Brits become a minority by 2050. So this is in my lifetime for sure. Well, fingers crossed. But that was based upon the idea of net migration running at about 200,000. It's been running at grossing 1 million, you know? And when you think about that, and at the moment, a lot of the multicultural communities are the cities. When this starts leaching out into the villages and the smaller towns, I don't think a lot of people are going to say we want to preserve these thatched roofs. You see it already, you know, when all of a sudden the historic fish and chip shop burns down because, you know, maybe the building insurance was too high. And this will then have an impact of sort of architecturally changing the look and feel of Britain. Because unless it's yours, unless you sort of want it and you remember it and it means something to you because your grandparents or their grandparents and onwards built it. So you think, I want to live in a thatched cottage because it's pretty. And you know what? It might be higher insurance, but I want to preserve it. I want to get it rethatched. That's going to go. That sort of sensitivity. What happens, right? In 2050 and beyond, if the demographic change is what people project, what happens to our museums? What happens to, you know, are the future generations going to have the same want to preserve our culture and our buildings?
Yeah, I don't know. I always feel weird on this topic of conversation because Bedford has always had a very multicultural demographic. Is always, since I was a kid, it's had a massive Indian community. We're known for having a road called Tavistock Street that's got far more Indian takeaways than it needs to service a town. A massive Italian community who came over to work London Brick. We have had a massive amount of Polish and Latvians, Lithuanians come over. So I've only ever known that. So I've never seen a change. So I haven't lived in a city where I've seen a change and people said, look, it's changed for the worse. So I can never speak on that with authority.
I mean, I think Gloucester's a case in point where I'm from. I've got memories of it as a kid. And first of all, you just had a far more bustling high street. And there are various reasons why that has, why that's changed, largely economic. But then around that, you've had a sort of growing immigrant community, which again, Gloucester always had one as well. Always had a West Indian community in the Barton area, a Muslim community in a big mosque in the same area. But that's sort of over the course of my lifetime, sort of everything's been radically changing. And you do start seeing a change in shops. So all of a sudden it's the exotic vegetables food store, and that's in a pub that used to have this beautiful frontage, you know, and you remember it as one of these really old fashioned traditional pubs. It should be like a listed building, and now it's a sort of Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, Caribbean fruit and veg store, and you think, well, that's a shame it's not a pub anymore. Don't mind people selling fruit and veg, but it's that little bit of culture and community that's been lost.
You know
the
why
church where my grandma got married is now an Islamic community centre. So these things are changing, and it does make you look and think, it's slipping through my fingers.
Yeah,
my heritage.
I put a lot of that blame because we have the same in Bedford. There's one beautiful old pub that's now a cafe. Your kind of posh posh coffees and your
yummy
posh
mummy
cakes.
place.
Yeah, but it was a pub,
Yeah.
and as I own a bar, and I've seen the attack on nightlife from the government, where they have not supported this as an industry at all. And I just kind of look at it all and just, I've seen this economic decline over the last, ever since I was a kid, whereby we're paying more in tax, we've got lower growth, we've got bigger government, we've got more of a squeeze on local business, we've got more of a squeeze on national business, and we seem to have political administration after administration don't understand the basics of economics.
Yeah.
And we've gone from a really terrible Conservative Party to an even worse Labour Party. And I don't know where these people think it ends.
I mean, they would sort of tell you, a number of them, that the idea that you get into government and you've got your hands anywhere near the levers of powers is for the birds. That actually so much is run by the quangocracy, the Bank of England, the big banks, the markets, that actually when it comes to what can I do and what's my room for manoeuvre, it's very, very tight. I mean, we saw what happened to Liz Truss, who was the first leader in a long, long time to turn around and say, this is how we're going to do an economic overhaul. And essentially the rug was pulled from under her feet. She didn't do anything to collapse the economy or anything like that. It was the other forces, essentially, that wanted to stymie her ability to put in place much needed change, because banks and pension funds have been cutting corners and making a mess for way too long, and so now we're sort of stuck in this Gordian knot, and it's created an economic doom loop. And then Rachel Reeves has come in and sort of pressed the fast forward button on decline.
Well, as you know, Liz was sat in that chair just a few days ago. We had a really good conversation about it. I'd read it's over there, the book. I read the book before the interview, covered the whole book. And I'm not here to defend her and say she got everything right, because I don't think she did, but I think she was probably the Prime Minister we needed, just at the wrong time. Because I think if she'd have been in power at a time where they had a strong majority, they would have been able to enforce some kind of change. But at the moment, I don't know where this ends, because it seems like I think the Conservative Party is particularly weak at the moment. Yeah. And I think the Labour Party, I think the traditional Labour ideas are actually dead. They just don't work anymore. And a lot of people looking to reform, and who I know very well. And they're obviously struggling with the speed of growth. The polling today, if you've seen it, it's phenomenal. I mean, Reform's now polling second place according to YouGov. So very tight behind Labour. I did read 1% behind. Yeah. I think their biggest challenge is the speed of growth, though. They've got a long time till the next general election. And if you look at the waves of so-called populism across Western Europe, there's a similar pattern where, for instance, I take Finland, and a couple of elections ago, the Finns party got the majority, but they said, look, we have no experience in government. And so, they didn't. Yeah. And so they turned around and said, look, we'll sort of, go into a coalition and give these people the senior jobs in cabinets. Because I think you do need people with a bit of experience. Perhaps the same sort of thing's going to have to happen at a future general election, but at least you would have in government, a party that would keep the feet to the fire. Look, I've known Nigel for a very, very long time. There's all this accusation that, he's gone too soft. He hasn't. He knows what he's doing. He's the best reader of the political tea leaves. The Overton window's shifting, yes, but it's shifted to such an extent that he's now in that sort of position where he is absolutely fine. He's not radical. He's not unsavoury. Everything he's saying is now true. So what he can't do right now is suddenly push the ticket and get himself back out of that if you're going to build cohorts of voters and get a majority. And I think the success of reform is being spelled out quite clearly in what the Labour Party are doing, and why more people aren't up in arms by their gerrymandering on steroids is beyond me. 11 local authorities now want to cancel the May local elections. Because they don't want to lose them.
Because they don't want to lose them. Yeah. Because Angela Rayner said, we want to bring in a whole different form of devolution. Fine. Okay, so you do that, you have it scrutinised, you look at an impact assessment, you do your due process and how that's going to be implemented. And then the elections after the next elections, you have it ready to put in place. No, she's given local authorities the options to postpone their elections for at least 2 years, i.e. therefore not have them, while she figures this out. You can't do that. You cannot say, do you know what? I'm just going to stop democracy.
Here we go. Scroll up a touch, gone. No. I meant the one below. I just want
there you are.
Our voting intentions
25, 26.
Close contest between Labour and Reform.
Yeah.
Labour 26%, Reform 25%, Conservatives 22%. Lib Dems are always about 14%.
Yeah, and
Never
yet they know
changes.
how to target, don't they? They can always convert into seats.
I mean,
they're ridiculous.
Reform ahead of Conservatives is insane.
Again, political favourability. You know, the current plan is that they essentially want to. The Tories have always had their anti-UKIP attack unit, their anti-Brexit Party unit. I know people who worked for it. I know who headed it up. And their focus now is to go after Nigel, take out top dog, because they know if they got rid of him, that polling would probably come down. They want to play the man and not the ball. So expect to see over coming months and years a massive onslaught against him personally. I think he needs to stand up and tell people that, prepare them for that so they see through it when it happens.
Yeah, it's been an interesting few weeks for him. I thought he handled Elon Musk's tweet against him really well, because that was quite the attack. That was quite, to put him quite, I mean, God knows if he knew it was coming and we just woke up and saw a tweet.
I think he's probably blindsided by it.
Yeah, I mean, and I thought he handled it really well. He's patient and replied. But I think he's been in a tricky position ever since the Tommy Robinson questions come about, which I kind of felt sorry for him on. Like I've definitely got an evolving view of Tommy Robinson. I probably had the cliche view that he was a thug for quite some time. And then he's been proven to be right on certain issues. So trying to hold these multiple views at the same time is a complex picture. But he was put in a really difficult position with Tommy.
Right. I mean, look, this is how it goes. Politically, the media, the mainstream media would be sitting there salivating, waiting for Nigel to say something positive about Tommy Robinson, and that's all they'll talk about. It will eclipse anything that he wants to talk about. And, you know, I tend not to sit and watch the BBC and, you know, ITV News, and I definitely don't watch Channel 4 News. I'd rather tear up my eyeballs and put them up my arse. But you know, a lot of people still do. And the problem is those people that still consume legacy media for news and opinion are the same people who probably vote in local elections. Yeah. Those of us who are sort of very active on X and stuff like that, a lot of them don't go and vote, especially not in local elections. No. And we think we're the majority, but we're not. In Britain, everything is still very much dominated by BBC and legacy media. And if you, I don't know, because I haven't seen any polling on this, but I'd imagine if you asked most people who actually go and vote, so not just the population, but people who always vote at every election, what they think of Tommy Robinson, I think the results would show that there was largely a sort of anti-viewpoint. Now, I'm like you. I've interviewed Tommy.
Oh, I haven't interviewed him.
Yeah, no, I've interviewed him. I even went to see him in prison. And I have a huge amount of warmth and respect for him. Yes, he's working class and he's thuggish and he used to be a football hooligan. He talks about that openly, right? But, you know, you look at where he's from in Luton. It's a dog-eat-dog world. You've got to run with a pack. You know, he's supposed to have come out of that environment as a little choir boy with perfect English who went to, you know, to train as a barrister and then gets to talk on these issues and be respected. No, he's a little bruiser. He's a fighting dog. He's a little guy, isn't he? He's a tough guy. And he decided to stand up for this before anybody because what he saw himself, and his history hasn't been told properly. The first thing he did was try and do petitions. And just imagining Tommy Robinson going around like getting everyone to sign a petition, it's sort of like that sort of thing doesn't happen in sort of most sort of rough and ready communities. He tried all these various routes and was being blocked out, and in the end said, right, we're going marching, and then it just, you know, went on from there. And of course, if you're going to do street demos, you're going to get wrong-uns coming and infiltrating and agitating. You will also have tactics, I'm sure, whether it's our own security services or hostile countries trying to create disruption, of implanting people within demos and protests to really stir things up. Yeah. So all these things have gone on. Yes, he, you know, went to prison when he was a very young lad for punching somebody who sort of came out and intervened when he was having a scrap with the woman who went on to be his wife. But, you know, I've worked in the bars and nightclubs of Gloucester. Guess what? Every now and then people throw punches. I'm not saying it's a good thing. Like, I'm not condoning it, but it is a reality. And And frankly speaking, in the private members clubs in Mayfairs, I bet people get drunk on their brandies and throw punches, but it doesn't get seen out on the street.
Didn't happen in the bar at Whitehall.
Yeah, well, yeah, plenty of MPs throw punches. We know that as well. So there has been a deliberate obfuscation of him, his personality, and what he's done. And the scales have fallen from my eyes. But I get why Nigel just can't go there. It shouldn't have to be that way, but it is. Yeah. And I would far rather that Nigel plays the game and ends up with a stonking majority where he can be in 10 Downing Street and actually affect change than doesn't play the game right now and cuts off his nose to spite his face.
The humble bee, a keystone species crucial to the survival of Earth's inhabitants. Here's how things would look if bees vanished. And here's how they'd look if humans vanished. But imagine if instead we became a keystone species by doing things the right way, by taking responsibility for our actions and becoming the solution. Iron mines the world's most responsible currency the right way. Because the future depends on it.
Well, I think you mentioned the over to window change. I think it's changed with Tommy as well.
Yeah.
I think my position on it was probably taken from a lot of people's, where all I knew of him was a few thuggish things and then some footage of the EDL and things like that. And you think, oh, you just kind of ignore him. And then we go through this period that we've been through for the last 2, 3, 4 years, especially over the last few months with the rape gangs, let's call them what they are. And then you look back and you think, you know what, he was right on that. And then I think my biggest blind spot was not realizing what a representation of the kind of discarded working class that he is.
Yeah.
And these people have been ignored. It's like when you spoke earlier and you talked about, I live on 100 grand in London and it's not an easy life. It's not what you think.
Yeah.
There will be people, working class voters of Labour,
to them,
that would
you'll
be like
lottery. Yeah.
What are you on about? But those people at the same time don't realise they're still being fucked themselves. They're getting absolutely screwed by this government.
But also when you look at some of the we have now got really ghettoised, deprived communities in the UK that most people in that bloody building in Westminster haven't got a fucking clue exist. They don't know. They've never been there. They've never met those people. Towns where you've got 75% unemployment. And their view is they want to blame the people who aren't employed. They want to point their finger, you're lazy, you're this, you're that. No, you took away from them the dignity of work. You took away from them all the things that they once cherished. You took away from them the comedy, the sort of, politically incorrect jokes, and called them all racists. You took away from them the local pub where people would meet up that gave a sense of community. You took away the ability to buy houses and have your children live on the same streets. And so all of a sudden you've got neighbours who don't even speak your language. You've chipped away and taken away from them everything that made them feel part of a society, that made them feel human, that made them feel that they belonged, that made them want to go out and contribute. And then pointed that finger at them and said, it's your fault, you're disgusting, you disgust me, you're lazy. They don't get it. They don't get it.
Alex, me and Kurt made a documentary about inflation. We went to Harlow. There's a tower block there. I don't know if you can find it, Connor, which they'd converted into housing. It was a building that shouldn't have been converted into housing. It's become its own ghetto in itself. It's become a hotspot of crime, sexual assaults, drugs. And we had a wander around the town. Yeah, look at this. It's like an open prison, the catastrophe of converting office blocks to homes. Because they needed more homes, so they converted this. So we went there, and it was kind of scary.
That's miserable, isn't it?
It was horrific. But you looked up at the windows, and you would see kids' toys. And so there were families living there. There's big iron gates on it. And I was looking at this thinking, how have we got to the point? We're meant to be a successful nation, a rich nation. That this is what we're giving people. This is the opportunity. And then we wandered around the town. We interviewed people. We spoke to people with the drug and alcohol problems. But what really hit me is we went to a church. Was it a church?
Yeah, I wasn't with you that day.
Oh, we went to this church where they had a food bank, and we went just to find out what's going on. Met a nurse, and she I can't remember if she spoke on camera. She was definitely embarrassed. She was really embarrassed because she says, I work full time. I am a nurse. And this was just post-COVID. So she'd been through that whole era of under pressure working through COVID.
Yeah.
And she said, I just cannot make ends meet. I cannot make ends meet. I cannot pay my rent, the fuel costs. I cannot pay my utility bills and feed myself and my family. And so she's having to go in the food bank. My mum was a nurse. I thought this is a fucking disgrace.
Yeah.
The fact we've got to this point where nurses can't feed themselves.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and so that to me was a real kind of inflection point. I was like, where are we heading? Yeah, we're 4 years on from making that film, and it's just got worse.
And it's going to get worse again.
Much worse.
It's going to keep getting worse. And no one's got an answer to it. That's the problem.
Oh, well, I think Liz has the answer.
I think Liz actually has the answer. Yeah. It'd be very hard to implement, but we need to have that moment now. We need to have the right, let's get on and do this. You know, genuinely, Brexit was a golden opportunity for so many things. Funny now that the people who are really cashing in on Brexit dividends are the Labour Party. We're going to have our own workers' rights. We're going to have Great British Energy and buy the whole network. We're going to renationalise railways. I'm like, oh, you're doing something with Brexit. That's really funny. Why couldn't the Conservatives? Because if we had taken the opportunity to just leave without a deal, not this wretched thing we've got in place now, which is basically keep paying into the EU, half follow its rules, but be kicked out of anything that was of any economic value. I mean, that's a completely declining continent. The idea that shackling ourselves to that in the future is going to help is for the birds. But if we had actually used those to build a model for prosperity, something that was very different, a Millet type model, blimey, we'd be laughing our way to the bank. If we were getting oil and gas out and using that to build up a sovereign wealth fund, if, you can see so clearly over the course of successive governments, and it's this sort of, it's the mind think that values are more important than policies, that, the sort of left-wing tropes echo louder than political pragmatism, that must save the environment, global warming, and leading the world in this is more important than making sure that your old mining villages are, prospering because there's now fracking and everyone's bills are going down. And I don't understand when this set in Britain. It was almost, I think, probably a post-Thatcherite, because she was sort of bloody-minded and very divisive as a consequence. I mean, I worship her. I think she's amazing. But the politics since then has become all about moral one-upmanship. Fuck off. What's that got to do with running a country? I don't need my leaders to be like bloody Ed Davey. I mean, what was that campaign? He's a disgrace. He was Post Office's minister. People should have been saying to him, you failed to answer your emails on Horizon Sunshine. Instead, he twatted about on jet skis and in lilos like an overgrown man baby. And all the waitress were like, I really like him. Isn't he lovely? I was watching some New Year's comedy programme, Last Leg, the other day. I don't know why, just flicking through the channels. And Sandy Toksvig was there and Ed Davey comes on. And she decides, no one asked her anything. She just said, oh, it's a disgrace that during the election, you didn't get as much airtime as Nigel Farage because he just says horrible things and all you say is nice things. And I thought, this is a highly educated woman, and that is the banality of our politics. Ed Miliband had not a single fucking policy. No one got a microphone anywhere near him because he was always on a body of water. And he got 72 seats or whatever it was. What the hell? What, because he seems nice?
Well, we have a lack of intelligence within our political institutions at the moment. We have a lack of experience. We have people who don't understand what it's like to run a company. They don't understand what it's like to run payroll. But I think I always refer back to this interview that, excuse me for bringing up the rest of politics, but they did an interview with John Major, and he talked about where politicians came from historically. And if you were working class and maybe ran a trade union, you went into the Labour Party. And if you were you run a successful company, or you had some experience within the military, a senior position, you'd become a Conservative politician. He said it brought in the best of people in. And it kind of made me think that you would have this a strong Conservative Party, a strong Labour Party, and that tension that you want between the two. But we've evolved to this stage where a lot of the politicians, they come from the student politician world. Yeah, it's a career, and they've got no experience. Yeah, I've got people within government telling me about economics telling me about how to run a company where they've got no experience in doing this. And so I think what we fundamentally, it's like Rachel Reeves, we fundamentally have an idiot, unintelligent, economically illiterate person in charge of a $1 trillion budget.
The quality of people now in that building is so low. And actually, it's amazing. This most recent cohort, particularly in the Labour Party, they're all about 20 years old. There's so many of them who are so bloody young. And I'm sorry, the whole idea, it's nice because the youth also need representation. What do you know? Go and live, have a fucking, ideology because you've built it over the course of a period of a lifetime where you've experienced things. So many people are in it because it's celebrity for ugly people, frankly. They just want to be the big I am in the town where they grew up. But they haven't got a fucking clue about politics. They don't even believe in anything. Most of them don't even have a political conviction. And that's, although saying that, I think it's quite the opposite with the senior members of the Labour Party. They do have a political conviction and not enough is made of that. The fact that we've got a Prime Minister who during the Cold War was in a Soviet workers' camp managed by a Czech spy, and we're like, yeah. Like, what? Are you kidding me?
Well,
that's mental. That's fucking insane.
I think the best representation we have right now is Rupert Lowe. In that he has the experience of running a company, experience of leading people, he understands economics, he understands business, he's tough. I mean, it's a bit like you can't parent. I've got 2 kids. You can't parent the way some of these politicians lead. Right. You have to do unpopular things. You have to do really unpopular things.
He's such a lovely gentleman as well. He gives his entire MP salary to local charities.
Yeah, because he doesn't need the money.
He doesn't need the money. Did Rishi Sunak do that? Does some of the others do that? I don't know. There's a lot of millionaires who sit on those green benches.
I know. It's a shame more people who didn't need the money would do the job, though. I mean, because if you don't need the money and you don't need the post politics career, after dinner speeches, the board seats, I think you can operate with a bit more integrity and backbone. Yeah, we just lack that integrity and backbone.
Yeah. They're all a load of them are on the make. They've all got their eyes on, if I lose my seat, what board position am I going to have? They all want to be paid for access. It's sinister. But
how do we change this? That's the big question. And I put a lot of blame at the Conservative Party themselves, and that is as a previous Conservative voter. Just for record, Alex, I haven't voted the last 3 elections just because I don't rate any of the parties. But I put a lot of the blame on the Conservatives. They've lost their backbone. Yeah. They completely lost their backbone. Them going to the centre ground has allowed Labour to act the way they've acted, and they've just become
the Conservatives, as far as I can tell, and look, I've never really been on the inside of them, but I know plenty of people who have, is a cancer set into the Conservative Party about 10, 15 years ago. Possibly about 10, 15 years ago, sort of in the Cameron era, I think. Which was the factions and the shadowy individuals and the blackmail and the leaks and the whips and when you have one bad apple in a cart, all the apples rot. And you ended up during that period, the sort of latter years of the Conservative government, is MPs running in and out of radio studios, writing columns about each other. Not about running the fucking country. It was a disgrace. And that became their main preoccupation because they were all fighting for survival. If I'm not briefing against this person, they'll be briefing against me. Oh, they're forming a faction. We better have a other faction. It was ridiculous. You're supposed to be a political party. Grow up. Serve. We're at risk now of seeing things like this begin to happen in reform. And I hope that reform holds fast and stays true, and that people realise that you're not always going to agree on everything, because nobody does. You could have, the person you're closest to in life, whose ideologies you pretty much 100% share, but there's always going to be an approach that you're not going to be 100% singing off the same hymn sheet. So you can't squander unity and loyalty and making something work for self-interest because you think everyone should see things through exactly your framework. And the Conservatives Party should serve as a living memory to people at the moment who are jostling for what reform should do. It should serve as a living memory of when that goes wrong, because one of the reasons the Labour Party are sat there right now of a big majority is because after the whole momentum debacle, guess what? They all shut up. They stopped throwing each other under a bus. And it worked. They didn't even have to do anything. They didn't even have to have a policy. They could keep it all quiet, not answer questions, get into government and commit mass destruction. But because they just managed to behave like mature individuals, which is ironic when you look at most of them, but they did, they got in. It's that simple.
Why did you join the Brexit Party?
I've been going on for ages, because I was UKIP, first of all.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, this goes back a really long way. After university, before I went to journalism school, I went off for a year to get experience under my belt in journalism. The journalism school I applied to, Cardiff, which then was the number one, I think it still is actually, by reputation, said to me, it's all very well you come in here with your fancy first, but, you know, what have you actually done? And I was like, well, I worked at my local news office and I did this. Yeah, but what have you worked in London? Have you freelanced for Newsnight? And I was like, no. Anyway, so I tried to get work experience with these places, but yeah, it's so nepotistic.
Yeah.
Your email just becomes one of thousands and no one gives a shit about you. And that's why you see so many similar surnames in the BBC. It's always the same fucking families. And I thought, what am I going to do? I can't afford to take a year out of study and go and live in London, which costs an arm and a leg, to work for free. Like, how the heck am I going to get the money to do that? So I came up with this idea that I'd go and work abroad instead. So I worked like an absolute dog in the NHS doing data inputting 9 till 5, and then worked in a nightclub in the evenings and would sort of have 2 little shifts of sleep. So basically working 6 days a week. Saving up all my money. And then I went to work in India on a broadsheet, came back and worked again. Then I went to work in China and I came back and did a load of grueling work in the UK. Then I went to work in Ghana. And that year really opened my eyes to a lot of things, particularly working in journalism in those countries. You know, I wasn't digging wells to take selfies for Instagram. Instagram wasn't even invented. I was actually, doing proper journalistic work. And when I was in Ghana, there were huge protests about the EU because they were trying to sign an economic partnership agreement with ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States. And basically, they were just screwing them over. They said, right, we want free trade with you, all the rest of it. And Ghana was like, well, that's a third of our GDP. We're going to get absolutely fucked if we sign this bit of paper. And the EU has, we saw with the Brexit negotiations, they have very sly and wily ways. Right, we're going to cut off this bit of aid. And in fact, we're going to cut off aid to all these countries. So all those countries which don't have the same GDP as Ghana, the Burkina Fasos and the rest of them, Togos, all signing up. And so Ghana was basically the last one standing who hadn't signed on the dotted line. The pressure put on was insane. And the people of Ghana, who are actually extremely politically literate, far more so than we are in the UK, listening to radio phone-ins, all talking about this. And it was the first time I suddenly went, fuck, the EU's evil.
Oh, yeah. So I went to Ghana, Kenya and Malawi last year. Was it last year? It was the December of the previous year. And I just realised basically we've exported our inflation to them.
Yeah. Yeah. The EU has screwed Africa over. It's not so much the EU, it is the corporate lobbyists who run the EU, because people think it's just those twats in a parliament. Well, I was one of those twats. They do nothing. It's the European Commission and the 30,000 strong army of lobbyists representing Unilever and Pfizer and whatever it may be.
Well, you can throw in the IMF and the World Bank as well.
Oh, so in them.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. The ECB, let's not forget them. And essentially, when they sort of turn around and go, yeah, we're going to have an everything but arms trade deal, they then use the non-tariff barriers, the bendy bananas. So they say to Kenya, oh, yeah, you can export tea in tea bags, in boxes, all the way to Britain, which would be great for Kenya, wouldn't it? Because the downflow of jobs you'd get if you suddenly have factories and people designing labels and people working out exports and human resources and all the grey collar work would be fantastic for the Kenyan economy. Okay, you've got to do all of that, but you've got to pay this minimum wage. 50% of your staff have to be female. Your tea's got to be kept at 2 degrees and, with a certain level of something to prevent a particular bacteria that might exist or might not. All of a sudden, it's all those other things that, okay, so Kenya could technically export tea in bags, in boxes to Britain, but it can't because of all of those restrictions. And that's why they end up locked in agrarian toil, basically, because of that shit. So now you've got a farcical situation where all of our tea in the supermarket comes from Kenya, basically. Pretty much 90% of it. India grows the most tea, but they drink it all themselves. You've got a situation where the Unilevers of this world go to the tea auction in Mombasa, buy the tea leaves. That then gets shipped out to places like Poland, where it's put in the tea bags and the boxes, which then get shipped to Britain to sell on our shelves. And I'm like, I would far rather that money goes into the pocket of Kenya, not via all these multinational, There
was a great one in Malawi. Kurt, do you remember the car charging stations, the electric chargers? So Malawi is one of the 10 poorest countries in the world. What was the deal with that? Was it part of a funding program that they had to have a rollout of electric charging stations?
Yeah, the UN or something was, one of these bodies was paying
subsidies.
Like $700 million or something for all we did.
Yeah, there were no electric cars in Malawi. And so it turns out this other guy started to build a business off the back of this because they had all this unused power at these electric charging stations. So he built another business out of it, mining Bitcoin off these charging stations. But it was just this I had to look at this. I was like, this just doesn't, it does make sense if you know there's corruption. Once you understand everything is corrupt, this is why somebody's getting paid to put these charging stations there. But no, I left Africa just feeling completely embarrassed by what we've done.
Or failed to do. I think it's the other way around, because I've lived...
Well, it's both directions. Yeah. What we failed to do and what we've done.
What we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I lived and worked in Ghana. I then spent a lot of time in Cameroon, done some work in Nigeria, and then went to live for a year in Kenya and worked at government, worked in the elections. And I realised that you've got a huge amount of great human resource, very intelligent people. There's this tendency in the West to think Africa's made all of its own problems. They've got a huge amount of endemic corruption. That's true. It is so habitual. How you clean that up, I don't know. But I think that as they advance to more sophisticated systems where you're buying things through digitized pathways, it's harder to do the right, you want a driving license, take the money under the desk kind of thing. So I think that the casual corruption that goes on will start to be eliminated by more sophisticated systems, I hope. But they do have a huge amount of corruption. I don't know what the answer is, frankly, to wipe that out. But the EU's completely raped them. China, even worse. Back when I was living in Ghana, right, during the whole time that this sort of EU argument was taking place, there were all these reports in China who were sort of starting to come in because they want access to gold. And they do all sorts of things. They make these illegal gold mines where there's this process called galamsey, where they will basically, all mining has to be government approved and strict standards so it doesn't pollute water supplies with mercury and so on and so forth. But China doesn't care. They just want access to the gold and the copper and the rare earth minerals. But while they're there doing all of that stuff, they're also doing things like bringing in their own domestic egg production, where they set up the big sort of egg farms with the lights that go on and off, whereas, the Ghanaians just have chickens clucking about in the roadside, and so wiping them out of business that way. And all the beautiful markets in Ghana, where they sell the beautiful African fabrics, which Ghana's famous for. It comes from a place called Akosombo. There used to be 11 print mills in Akosombo creating all these, phantasmagorical African fabrics. It's down to about one, because the Chinese were coming over, taking the fabrics, copying the design, taking them back to China, printing them in China, and selling them back to Africa for cheaper than the Africans are making it.
It's so ludicrous.
But this is happening all over Africa, and people have no idea that, China undermines our economy. 90% of the crap people are buying off Amazon is coming from, Xinjiang and places where they have workers' camps. So, of course, it's cheaper because these people aren't even paid. But they're even undermining African economies. And, I don't understand why you got Rachel Reeves getting on a plane to glad hand old President Xi when we're in economic crisis. The message that should be put out to the world is stop buying Chinese. Stop it.
But she's desperate.
Oh, they just need to get their windmills and their solar panels because Ed Miliband is just obsessed with net zero.
It's very important that you don't lose this, okay? This is your inheritance through Bitcoin.
Let Bitcoin rip. Don't rip up your Bitcoin. Set up inheritance with Casa.
Yeah, she's desperate. I don't really want to talk about her much more because she's annoys me. I do want to talk to you about something else, though, important issue that we talked about on email beforehand, which is women's safety. So I have a 14-year-old daughter. It's on my mind. Also, so the advertising agency, I mentioned her down there in Covent Garden, Sarah Everard worked for me for 5 years, so I knew her very well. And that was like a real inflection point for me for realising that I don't really understand what it's like for a woman, where we learnt about the different experiences of walking late at night, because she was travelling back from her friend's house and
did what a lot of girls do, which is you're walking home somewhere at night time. Maybe it's just a couple of blocks, but you make sure someone's on the other end of the phone. So if something happens to you, they know, and you think that's going to be a deterrent. Well,
so it's different things that I was made aware of at the time. So one girl explained to me that the experience where you feel like somebody's walking behind you. So I now, if I'm walking by, I try and cross the road. Another girl said she always has her keys in her pocket.
Yeah, ready, run out there.
And you know, something I hadn't fully come to appreciate. That it's still essentially a man's world, and we are, as men, responsible for the majority of sexual assaults and attacks.
It's worse now than it's ever been. It's far worse now than it's ever been. When I was growing up, I did used to walk around at night times, but at university and stuff like that, I would never do that now. I mean, I went to university in Durham. I'd imagine it's a far safer place than London. But even when I first moved to London, I lived in Westminster, and at 11 o'clock at night, I'd walk home. Absolutely no way now.
Is that because it's definitely more? I mean, look, I know London's become more unsafe, but
yes, it's more unsafe.
Are you also more? You get older, you get more mature, and you just don't want to put yourself more risk.
You're not as okay. So there's you're far less risk taking because shit has happened to you, and it is far less safe now. And I can tell you that because I walk these streets just on the way here. I kind of thought, shame I missed that moment. I mean, this is the irony, right? So walking here, I was having an argument. Sitting in Clark's shoe shop, I was getting some sensible flats because I'm off to America, and I saw that Femi had picked up on a tweet that I'd put out saying that that Bonnie Blue character, we need to have a conversation about how the pornification of particularly white women will have men from other countries regard us in a different way. I think that's absolutely fair to say that. As a woman with blonde hair who's been around parts of the world, particularly the Arab world, it's like flies to flypaper. And there is a perception, and we know this from the conversations that we're having now about grooming gangs, there is a perception that white women are of lesser value because of perhaps the way they carry themselves as well and the sort of sexual liberation. I put that up in frickin' Femi. It says something like, there you go, dog whistle, other communities. You didn't realise you're being racist or something like that. And I said other communities deliberately because it is other communities. White British men will have a sort of understanding because it's baked into culture growing over time, that you go to Newcastle and there's all the dolly birds out in, minus 10 degrees in their high heels and their, knicker scraping skirts and all the rest of it. That doesn't mean you can go and do what you like to them. Men have come from countries where women are dressed like ghosts, where they're not even allowed to go to the grocery store without a chaperone. And then they're bombarded with porn online. They're going to, what do you expect them to think? And at the same time, girls are being told, being, so sexually liberal, being sort of Kardashian, having your lips like this and your boobs like that, and being made on a surgical table, so you're essentially just a collection of body parts and an orifice, is good. That's empowerment. No. You put all this together and it's a toxic cocktail. So I was having this freaking argument with Femi as I sat in Clark's, and I was like, I'm not going to have this. I'm not going to have you saying racist because I'm talking about women's safety. Have people not learnt their lesson already? Anyway, so I come out of Clark's, and I like you were saying, I was walking with my phone in my coat pocket sleeve like this. I had Google Maps on to get here, but you don't have your phone out. So it's stuffed right at my coat sleeve, and I could hear it going buzz, buzz when I had to change street. Because I've been mugged twice now in this area just because I had the audacity of holding my phone out. Again, most victims of phone muggings are women walking by themselves, easier targets. So I walked down the street, a guy of some sort of, Middle Eastern descent, I assume, comes up and he's like, hey, beautiful, hey, smile, hey, can I get your number? And I was thinking, if only I had my phone out to film that, because I constantly say that this stuff happens repeatedly. And you know what? Men are going to be blind to it. Here's a couple of examples. So I went on holiday to Morocco recently with my other half. I love Morocco, so I don't want to be disparaging about Morocco as a country. I go back there regularly, but do you know what? This colour hair in the souks, not a good idea by yourself. So we're walking down together in the souks, and when we're holding hands, having a nice time, doing a bit of shopping, the minute he stops to look at something and it's so crowded, I sort of fall 5 paces behind. Hey, gazelle, and at one point a man just came up, grabbed me between the legs. I'd only let go of Nicholas's hand for about 10 seconds. And the thing is, men will have no idea the harassment that women can face because it doesn't happen if that woman is with a man.
Oh, and we also don't get harassed.
And you don't get harassed. So never when I'm walking with my boyfriend does someone come and go, hey, you're beautiful, can I get your number? Why would they do that? But if he's not near me, and especially men will target you when there is no one around, they will look and see a girl by herself and think, opportune moment. And it happens all the time. I'm 41, right? I'm steely about this now, and I don't give a shit about political correctness. And when I say that men from cultures who are not predominantly Western European are far more predatory and far more, intrusive in the way that they approach women, I mean it, because it's true. That's not being racist, that's just true. Ask any bloody woman, it is true. Now, I'm not saying that all white men are wonderful and knights in shining armour, but by and large, when a man wants to get a woman's attention in Britain, it might be the wolf whistle from a builder's van. Oh yeah, we all have to worry about that. We've got to ban wolf whistling because it's awful. But it's kind of safe, isn't it? They're in a car going past. There's no immediate sense of I'm in danger. Wolf whistling is not a problem, right? As far as I'm concerned, it kind of puts a spring in my step. We're not having a conversation about the men who come up to you and trail you to your front door. That's happened to me twice now. In the past year. That's what we need to talk about. These posters on the London Underground saying, please don't stare at people. Who's doing that staring? Because most of the sort of, British guys who are on their way to work in the city or whatever are just like this looking at their phones. The one who's hanging on to the thing, eyeballing you, I can tell you who he is. Most women can tell you who he is. And I'm not going to have a situation anymore that we're not allowed to talk about this. How many more ridiculous incidents? How many more atrocities? Like what's gone on in the towns across the north, in Oxfordshire, and probably every town and city now in the UK with rape gangs. When are we going to say that this is a problem? And it's interesting, you talk about poor Sarah Everard. The outcry about that, and there needed to be an outcry, so I'm not diminishing that, but the outcry was vocal and went on for a very long time because the perpetrator was a white policeman.
Yeah.
If it had been, I'm sorry, if she had died at the hands of a migrant coming out of a hotel,
I think the policeman was the most shocking bit of it.
Yeah, it's shocking.
That was
it's
the shocking
awful.
bit. And so I'll tell you a weird story about this one. So when she first went missing, my business partner, Ollie, called me and he said, oh, Sarah's gone missing. It's about a day into it.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? And it would have been probably about 4 years since she'd worked for us. And so I phoned up my friend at the Met and I said to him, are you aware of this Sarah Everard who's missing? He said, yeah. I said, what's the situation? He said, I feel bad saying this on here because of her parents, but he said, oh, she's most probably dead. I was like, how do you know that? He said, but it's been 24 hours. If you can't get hold of somebody for 24 hours, they're usually dead because there's always a way to get hold of them. Everyone's got mobile phones. She'll check in with people. He said, it's not always, but most probably. I said, what happens now? He said, well, what they'll do in the area, they will start searching for police reports of incidences of flashing, etc. Because what tends to happen is somebody who has this urge to rape and kill, they don't rape and kill as their first act. They never do. There's a build-up. And usually they'll go and flash first because they're trying to deal with this urge. It's like an inexplainable urge. And then it turns out he'd gone to McDonald's and flashed himself at I think, was it a drive-through? I can't remember the exact details, but that was a policeman who was seen doing that and he wasn't picked up on that. So that was part of the shocking nature of it for it. Well, I think was part of the policeman.
Yeah, oh no, it's a huge institutional cover-up. That man should have been nowhere near the police force.
The
red flags have been there for a long time.
He was armed at one point.
Yeah. So it's not diminishing. What I'm talking about here is the outcry of the public and how the media, went to town on it and talked about it. There were phone-ins and debates about the misogyny within the police. We need an inquiry. We need this. We need that. Fine. Yes, all of those things. But I'm sure there are plenty of instances actually up and down the country of women and girls who have been attacked, possibly killed by men from other countries, and they will be covered up. It's a completely different approach. And so what you have now...
But that's that fear of being called a racist.
But yeah, but
we know that now.
You've got the fear of being called racist. But even worse, you've got a lot of women now who think that we live in a horrible patriarchal society and our men are the problem. Our men are our defenders.
Not always.
No, not always. I get that.
The area I want to be careful with this is because, I don't know the stats, Alex. I don't know the stats.
3.5 men from other countries are 3.5 times more likely, or have committed 3.5 times more sexual crimes in the UK than Brits.
I didn't know that, and
the stats are out,
and that fully needs to be discussed and talked about. But that's 3.5 times something that other men have done as well. So I think there is two issues at hand. There is the broad issue of the sexual assault, tax, rapes, murder of women, and how we treat women in society. And then there is this more the statistics of people from different backgrounds who are more likely. And I think I don't want to cover one and ignore the rest. I've got a daughter. I want to protect it from everyone. Yeah. And I feel like part of the problem is us as men, we've kind of lost our role as protectors.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And I feel like we should be protected. I don't think that should be something that is misogynistic.
No, I think I absolutely agree with you. That sort of lovely traditional man's role of being a father, looking after his cubs, looking after his woman. It's a beautiful thing. And whereas men have been, it's not so much that they've been feminized, it's that everybody has been infantilized. Everybody's been infantilized. And at the same time, the message to girls especially has been, it is empowering to use your body to earn money, basically.
Yeah, so me and Connor were talking about that on the way down. So we popped up Bonnie, had a little look. She's been 1,000 men, 1,057 was it? Run through her like a train. And I'm talking about the OnlyFans thing. And the point I was saying to Connor is, this weird thing was, if it was somebody I won't pick anyone's name.
If it was your sister, your aunt, your cousin.
But imagine a friend of mine, just someone I went to school with, was a porn actress out there making hardcore porn. You're like, what the fuck are you doing?
Are you okay? Are you in trouble? Do you need money?
But OnlyFans has kind of normalised it. It's kind of this bridge between Instagram and porn where it's like, I still would be concerned, like, what are you doing? But it's like the acceptable face of porn now.
No, to me, the thing that normalised it was the whole cult of Kardashian. Because these women don't do anything. They've got no talents. They don't sing. They don't act. They don't play sports. They've all been made on a surgical table with massively enhanced features, which are hypersexualized. That one who flogs the lip gloss or whatever it is. And when you look at pictures of her as a 13-year-old, she was sort of a gawky, very, very normal-looking girl, and she'd have grown up to be a very normal-looking woman. And everything about her has been structurally created through plastic surgery. Now she's a billionaire-esque flogging makeup.
By the way, have you seen Kelly Osbourne? So I was watching this.
Right.
Search for Kelly Osbourne. Try and find a photo of her blonde, Connor. You remember Kelly Osbourne, right?
Yeah, because she's sort of big, sort of roundish face and the mad black hair.
I was watching a thing about the LA fires last night.
Yeah.
And she came on to speak about it. It was a different person.
That ain't her.
That is Kelly Osbourne.
Are you kidding me?
Go to the one with the straight hair.
Oh my God. I want to zoom in on everything about that. You kidding me?
Right. Connor, you probably won't remember Kelly Osbourne. Search Kelly Osbourne 1990s. No, that's too early. 2000. I mean, it's a completely different person. Look at her. It's like a different human. It's a completely different human.
Yeah, but if you look, she's a funny teenage gothy one, but you go back to that previous picture, right, of Kelly Osbourne, and...
Yeah, just go back, Con. Just click on the back.
Like, go back to the one where sort of that, no, not that one, I want that top right-hand one.
Top right.
Or that, yeah. So that picture there. Now, do you see my problem with this? The lips are the size of like she's been punched. The big artificial blonde hair. She looks like a porn star.
Yeah,
and what
yeah.
women are being told, and little girls are being told, that actually having all of these sort of like markers of hypersexuality is what is most desirable. Now, being beautiful and being sexy, that's always existed in advertising. Marilyn Monroe, it always will, you know, from Nefertiti to Cleopatra to, you know, Elizabeth I whacking lead poisoning on her face to look like a ghost, because that's what was attractive back then. You know, that's always going to exist. But the problem now is it is so hypersexualized that it is a sum of body parts. It's hair, lips, breasts, arse. It is nothing. There's no individuality in a face. Yeah, that's the one. He's literally been made on a. I mean, that's like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, again, concerning having a daughter, that she sees this and this is what she believes is an expectation. But that normalization of OnlyFans, where it's kind of become almost it's culturally acceptable.
And what's so scary, especially about Bonnie Blue, right? And literally speaking to my other half about this just this morning. And he said this is his words. He said, what's scary about her is when you see her speaking, she sounds like she is articulate. Mm-hmm. She seems very much in control of herself. She seems perfectly sane. She seems like she lives a very nice lifestyle with a lot of money. Her teeth are perfect. All this. She's not sitting there looking like someone who has just slept with 1,000 men in 24 hours, who's mentally ill. You know, she's not like, and the thing is, there'll be a lot of girls who watch that and think, well, she seems quite normal. She's now a millionaire-esque because she's done this thing.
Well, it's her place in the attention economy. She's figured out that part of the attention.
Oh, I like that, attention economy.
Yeah, well, the attention economy is, I mean, we're in the attention economy.
No, but I like that phrase. I've not heard that before.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the attention economy is it's kind of close to a pure free market.
Yeah.
In that I put this out, and how many people will view it because they choose to, because they go on YouTube or Spotify or whatever. Whereas legacy media isn't really a free market. There are whatever licensing deals with Sky and Virgin, the networks, and they get to pop out their
and have
bullshit.
The benefit of habits and.
We have to produce. I have to produce content people like. I have to bring on people that people like. We have to have conversations that people like. If they don't like it or they don't like me, they're not going to listen. But that's attention economy. The music industry is slowly becoming an attention economy because you make your money from downloads. Like you get the interest from downloads, you make your money at concerts. That porn is now attention economy.
Yeah.
OnlyFans is attention economy. And she's figured out this place that if I set the record for the most men who can run through me in a day, I'm going to get loads of attention.
Ghastly.
But we're perpetuating it by talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
But the part of that concerns me for all boys, doesn't matter what your ethnic background is, what are we teaching young lads? Like young lads going on TikTok, seeing this girl saying, she's hanging around university campuses saying, I want young men, come and 18-year-olds can go and have 2 minutes with them. God knows what they find out that happens to them in the future and the regret they have of, because they've essentially become a porn star.
So did you know, right? So I've been talking about porn for a long time now. Now, I'm not some sort of prude who thinks that no one should ever have or view adult content. It exists. I'm against it. I'm a Christian. I wouldn't want my other half doing it because for me that actually would be cheating. Right? If you're getting sexually aroused and stimulated by somebody else's naked body, I personally, in a relationship, do not regard that as right, and I don't regard that as faithful because I think it diminishes that sort of extremely special intimacy you have in a relationship. And I very much that way with my other half. I don't look at another man. I don't, no one turns my head. He's perfect. He's beautiful.
Go on, Nick.
He is gorgeous. He looks like Ryan Reynolds.
Does he?
But he's like proper right wing. Yeah, I did well. But the thing is now, what we had is once upon a time, porn was in magazines and it was sort of still photos in a newsagent, and women kind of looked like women. You had big hairy growlers and normal body shapes, straddling a motorbike or whatever. It was kind of almost stupid, but there was something very different between leafing through a magazine and it being titillating, and even page 3, to lots of video pornography, which again, once upon a time, there was a sort of taboo or I suppose shame with going into a porn shop to buy a DVD.
I'll be honest, as a teenage boy, what happened is one would nick one off his dad, and then you'd share it around.
Yeah, exactly.
It's weird talking about this in front of my son.
But it's that's how it would work.
Don't you look at porn?
But there was still, so a sort of material thing where someone knows, you've seen it to pass it on or to buy it or, Now, anybody can just sit behind a veil of anonymity and log into a porn site and see content that is extreme.
Yeah.
So here comes some porn facts for you. When there was a case of a rape victim having their video put up on Pornhub, and it was monetized and loads of people watched it, and she took Visa to court because Visa ran the payment platform on Pornhub, and Visa quite rightly said, what is going on here, and said to Pornhub, how much other content like this is on this site. And Pornhub did an audit, and I think it's about 48 hours, and you know what percentage of videos had to be taken down?
Oh, please don't. It's going to freak me out, isn't it?
88%.
What?
88% is sort of unknown provenance, displayed acts of violence towards women, gang rape, things like bukkake, which I think is a vile concept, underage, depiction of underage, dehumanizing practices. Now, again, when you've got the adult film industry, actors and actresses making DVDs, first of all, the women got paid a lot more than men, but also, there is that sense of they're in control of what they're doing. When you allow people to just stick up any old video, it could be of anyone and put up by anyone and be being watched by anyone. There's no control mechanism. A huge amount of online porn is now people who have been trafficked. Ask yourself what happened to so many women and girls who left Ukraine. Where might they have ended up? Women, being trafficked through from Eastern and Central Europe by Albanians. What do you think? When you see these women moaning and writhing on a screen, do you think they're really enjoying themselves, or could they be in a situation where they're being made to look like they do? You think women want to have a fishhook in the mouth, spanked, spat on, hair pulled, and, multiple penetration and do you think most women want that? No, they don't. And yet this is the stuff that's being depicted in pornography. And a lot of young guys now think that women do want it. Then you've got this crazy situation with that 50 Shades of Grey book and film, that it became sort of cool and hip and normalised to want a bit of S&M. I'm sorry, there might be a few people out there who enjoy that. I don't think, I've got no statistics on this, but I just don't think, from having conversations with other women, I've never met one who does. Ever. And yet the message being given to both young men and young women is, this is what an exciting sex life is like. And I bet there are teenagers and people in their 20s up and down the country who are sort of doing mild strangulation and spanking and hair pulling. And the girl's doing it because she thinks that that's what he wants. He's doing it because he thinks that's what she wants. And neither of them want it. And do you know what they're not doing in that process?
Talking.
They're not sharing the oxytocin of cuddling and kissing and looking into each other's eyes, which is what that most intimate act is supposed to be about.
At Ledden, we built the best Bitcoin-backed loan platform in the world. Proven, trusted, growing. Ledden's proven track record speaks for itself. Visit ledden.io/Mr. Obnoxious to get started. Ledden, there is no second best. Ledden is not regulated in the United Kingdom. Any credit products or virtual asset services provided by Ledden are not subject to UK regulatory protections. Please consider the risks associated with virtual assets and consult a financial advisor before making any decisions.
Well, I mean, we've reinvented the whole process of dating through to sex. All of it's been reinvented. The data. I mean, I'm a firm believer that Tinder has put the control of dating in the hands of the men when it used to be in the hands of the women. The man had to go and talk to the woman. Is very nervous about it. If she talked to him, gave you a number, it was incredible, and maybe you'd go on a date with her, and you'd never know when you'll see another girl again. Another girl might not talk to you, so you invest in a relationship.
Yeah.
And now, to idiots, which we fundamentally are in some ways with dating, you've given men control to just swipe.
Yeah, and then have about 10 people that you're all messaging, and you go on a date with this one, but she doesn't want to go home with you, so you immediately phone up that one. And
one of my saddest experiences, I've been single for a long time in my 30s. My late 30s was dating, and knowing how many young women want to get married and have children, and there is a very small pool of men who are in that same zone. Who also want to get married and have children,
right? Especially
in major cities, because we've given them the crack version of dating, which is you can take as many women as you want, you can sleep with as many women as you want, and it's fundamentally shifted everything. But I think this is I think everything we're talking about, Alex, today, all is the same kind of cultural decline, the lack of conservatism.
Yeah.
Which really frustrates me. And it frustrates me that conservatism itself has become a pejorative.
Yeah. But do you know what is fundamentally at the base of this? Oh, and actually, before we move on, I actually think it's worth mentioning while we're on the subject of porn, two things. One is we don't talk enough about the gay community. I would be more worried of having a gay son than a daughter. Because a young boy, age 14, 15, going out into that world, going to a bar in Soho, I mean, shit that they're exposed to. We don't talk enough about young gay men. And you know what? I'd be interested to learn how many young boys were attacked by grooming gangs. Because in some of these countries, it is customary in some parts of these countries to
Afghanistan?
keep young boys. Yeah.
Did I just see some videos come out in Afghanistan where these young lads are dancing?
And you'd imagine if the same's been true of a vulnerable young boy in one of these communities and he's been groomed and abused, the stigma is such that he'll probably never tell anybody. And we've got to remember the biggest rapist we've ever had in this country was that guy who was drugging drunk men and raping them, and then they'd wake up the next day and had no idea.
Yeah, and they're too ashamed to tell anyone.
Yeah.
I was like, this can't be real.
But there is a...
Is that a young man dressed as a woman as well? Is that what they're doing? Can you scroll that down, Con? This is, and it's BBC World Service. Okay. In Afghanistan, women are not allowed to dance in public, but boys being made to dance in women's clothes and they're often sexually abused. Yeah. It's after midnight at a wedding party in a remote village in northern Afghanistan. There's no sign of a bride or groom or any women, only men. Some of them are armed, some of them are taking drugs. Yeah. Almost everyone's attention is focused on a 15-year-old boy. He's dancing for the crowd in a long, shiny woman's dress. His face is so fucking weird. It's so weird. So we don't talk about young gay boys enough and their vulnerabilities. Yeah. You know, we talk about women and their safety, but they've been left out of the conversation. And it's terrifying with the chemsex parties and all the rest of it. Yes. What goes on now? GHB?
Yeah, just awful things.
There's a good documentary that covers that.
Oh, is there?
Yes. I can't remember what it's called, but I saw it because I know somebody, I think it's GHB, who took GHB and ended up in a coma.
Right. But that is, I think, something that we also need to shine a light on because there's so much stigma around it. The other thing is a very interesting statistic. What do you think the rate of ED, erectile dysfunction, is among men under the age of 40 in Britain?
I have no idea.
If I told you it used to be very, very niche and unlikely, I don't know what the percentage used to be, that a man would have erectile dysfunction under the age of 30. So it's not for mechanical reasons, blood pressure and all the rest of it. Under the age of 40, it was tiny. It's now about a third.
Is that because they can't get aroused from things that aren't porn?
Because that's,
too much porn.
So essentially what happens is it's a bit like online gambling, because there's just sort of these little short videos of extreme content with sort of viewpoints and visions you don't get in a normal bedroom if you're sort of actually doing this with someone else. Then you can go on to the next video and go on to the next video. It actually has the effect of neurologically rewiring the brain. So the stimulus a man needs for arousal has actually fundamentally changes. It does change the brain chemistry. And so now erectile dysfunction of men under 40 is running at about a third.
That's insane.
So this impacts men as well. This isn't just about women's safety. This impacts all of society. This is why we're not having children. This is why the birth rate is, plummeting so low, and people are mentally ill and upset, and families are falling apart. And then you end up with sort of broken families. And so you end up with another generation of harmed people, and on it goes.
I think with that lower birth rate, I think we also have to add in there that people can't also afford.
The economy is a big part of it. Yeah,
they also can't afford to.
But it's cultural and economic.
Yeah.
Now, one of the reasons why there's been this huge cultural fallout, as far as I can tell, is because it became very trendy in the sort of 70s, 80s onwards to diss Christianity, to throw religion under the bus like it's some sort of weird mysticism, like it's very unfashionable. So I'm a Christian, I go to church. When my other half told one of his friends, oh yeah, Alex goes to church, they sort of looked at him like, you're dating a weirdo, what a mentalist. But what you realise, and it's weird actually, there's now this sort of resurgence, isn't there, especially on the right wing, of people are waking up and going, okay, we threw something away here and it's worth examining.
Well, it reflects the values that they think are missing in society.
Yeah, exactly. And it does, because it created a structure. Looking at the boys in Afghanistan and all of this, the ancient Greeks always used to keep little boys, as did Romans. In a Roman household, everyone in that household belonged to the man. So whether it's the serving girl, the boy, the wife, the children, all of their orifices belonged to the man, and he could do whatever he wanted in any of those orifices, and often did just to demonstrate might. The ancients were pretty ghoulish people. They weren't great. Then something very radical happened about 2,000 years ago, which changed everything. And that was essentially Jesus. Now, whether you believe in Jesus or not, he definitely existed, but whatever. Whether you believe in the whole sort of religious aspect of it, the fundamental thing is the message of Christianity has been the biggest shaper of morality, peace and progress that the world has ever seen. It's why most inventions have come out of Christian countries. It's why democracies come out of Christian countries. It's why the abolition of slavery came from Christianity. It has been the greatest, most important fundamental change to have ever happened to this planet and the way humans see themselves and see others. That's led to prosperity and peace. And to throw that under the bus as we have done and try and replace it with neo-religions like trans rights and climate change and, whatever it may be, it's killing us. It's killing Western civilization.
I do feel like we are, again, at another inflection point. I think there's a shift happening, a shift coming, a revolution, because I think a lot of people have realized it hasn't made them happy.
No.
There's a lot of miserable people out there who are single, miserable, earning good money, miserable. They just realize the promise of this kind of like liberal society just hasn't delivered. Yeah. I'm feeling that shift. I'm feeling the shift is coming from the base of economics, though. People are feeling just attacked, middle class, working class. And I think there's a resurgence. This is why Reform is such an interesting party for me, because the kind of traditional elite of Conservatives, Labours, Lib Dems, they don't understand it. They still don't understand Reform. They still look at Nigel Farage as some kind of like Europe-hating fascist, right? But they don't understand really. All he is a representation of traditional people, traditional values who are saying, I've had enough of this shit. And that's why you showed those polling numbers. They're great. Yeah. And they're only, I expect by the next poll in a month, they could be ahead. And I think this shift is, I hope it's coming.
Wait to see what happens after the Southport inquest. Those numbers are going to move.
On the 20th.
Yeah.
How long is that going to take?
I have no idea. But of course, it is being deliberately scheduled for the 20th. So it clashes with inaugurations. So there'll be
bang the table and make a noise.
Sort of, things happening in DC being broadcast on television screens. But a trial takes more than just a day. I just wonder. I don't know. I really don't know. But I just wonder if on the 20th, what we're going to learn from that trial is, well, he was a minor when he committed the act, because I think he turned 18 mere days after it. And the people he attacked were minors. And so therefore, reporting restrictions, I don't know, because they've already tried it with the anonymity thing for a long time, didn't they? Before they then felt like they had to release the name. I wonder, because at the moment, it seems to me all the authorities are just in damage limitation. They fucked the country. It's all falling apart and they can't reverse that now. So what they've got to do is just prevent it not getting out of hand, which would be people rising up and starting, smashing up windows and stuff like that. And so their big worry with that trial is going to be what it will instigate. And so I just wonder if there will be some sort of announcement that there'll be heavy reporting restrictions on it.
Possibly, but
I don't know.
But even if they do, all that's going to do is cause another shitstorm.
Well, you say that, but the thing is, Starmer's already quite cleverly sequenced the run-up to it with the riots and the Judge Judy trials of the rioters. Yes, it might have cost us our international reputation that we throw people in prison for social media posts, but it has worked. Very few people now are going to go to the streets.
I still think it will happen. And there'll be lots of suspicion as well. And I think, look, the biggest problem for him is Elon Musk, because he gives zero fucks.
Yeah.
He will say what he wants about this. And if there is suspicion that they're hiding things, he will. But it really bothers me because there's this kind of inertia to doing the right thing that seems to exist, certainly with the Labour Party, still exists with the Conservatives. And I feel like the growth of the internet and the expansion of this kind of independent media has created a demand for authenticity. Like, I can't hide. I am just a moron from Bedford with tattoos. You can't hide, and these are our views, and you either like it or you don't.
I'm just a moron from Gloucester without them.
Yeah, a couple of morons talking about the real issues. Yeah, but rather than going on to the BBC and seeing this kind of elite from society who are actual real morons,
Yeah.
not talking about the real issues. I think there's a demand for people to have these conversations, talk about it and hear it. And so if they do that and if they try and hide it, they're just going to get more and more exposed. And I think what we're waiting for is this revolution in politics of authentic politicians who are fallible, who make mistakes, but are real and represent us.
I think as well, we talked earlier about the Overton window shifting. Every generation tends to disavow the previous generation's ideologies. And I think we're going to get to stage in about with our, the kids coming up and the kids underneath them. They will have no truck with woke. What's more, they'll look back and say, what the fuck did you allow to happen?
What's happening?
And all the people who have been like at their dinner parties going, oh yeah, I'm going, my kids' pronouns are they and them, and woo, Palestine. I think Hamas is really misunderstood. All of that fucking shit that they say because they want to use it as a way of getting one-upmanship and moral self-righteousness. It's their way now of beating down on the working class because they've lived such sheltered and protected lives where they've been inoculated against the horrors that the working class have to face, that they have a hindered view. Whereas if you live an unsheltered existence, you see the reality. There's nothing to protect you from it. And all of these people have parroted these ideas as a form of luxury, as a designer handbag. Wind the clock forward in 10 years' time, and you won't find a single one admit to it. They'll be in their 60s now, in their 50s in 10 years' time, say people my age or the sort of left wokies, and they'll say, oh, I always said that it was wrong that children should have puberty blockers. Oh, I always said. They won't fucking admit to it because they're cowards. They want to protect their own station and status in life. And now everyone can get on a plane and go to somewhere sunny. Now everyone can own a smartphone. Now most people can get a car on finance that is, equally decent. They have to find new ways of showing status.
Yeah. So we can save this conversation for another time because I'm sure we'll talk again. I would be a non-Hamas defender of Palestinian people, just so you know.
No, that's sort of that's. I think most people would defend just humans.
But what I think might be quite interesting, just ask Connor a couple of questions. Connor's 20. Do you ever watch BBC News, Sky News? Never. Do any of your mates?
I don't imagine so.
Where do you get your news?
Twitter or YouTube, TikTok, social media.
So I feel like
and
we're
a lot of podcasts. Sorry, I should add. Yeah,
a lot of podcasts. And look, I've certainly influenced his views. Since
it's a good job you didn't ask his watching habits about our previous conversation.
I think he's a very lovely, respectful boy, Connor is, and I can't imagine he's ever watched porn like his father. But I've definitely influenced him. Like growing up, he said, "Fuck the government, don't trust anyone," blah blah blah. But at the same time, I think we are a generation or two from this mainstream news just having very little kind of role in our society, being very... Because, look, I put out an interview with Liz Truss the other day. It's already nearly 500,000 views. I mean, that is competitive. That is competitive media. I'm sure the stuff you do gets massive numbers. It's competitive media. And people know I'm a moron and I make mistakes. And I'm vaccinated, something I totally regret. And I admit it. I completely fucking regret it.
Me too. I had 3 and I'm like, why?
3, I had 2.
I only had my 3rd one because I wanted to go to the Canary Islands.
Yeah, well, I know somebody had a vaccination could travel as well. I had to go to Ireland, see my dad. And also, but I wasn't scared. I just took the piss out of people who were. And I thought, first lockdown, I was like, that's a good idea. Like, I've made mistakes. But people, I think there's a value in that. People look and go, oh, Alex has admitted mistakes. Pete's admitted mistakes. Yeah, at least I trust that they're doing the right thing. But it's all these people who never admit, like, Rachel Reeves has not done anything wrong. Everything is the fault of the Conservatives. Everything is a 22 billion black hole. Keir Starmer's the same. The Conservatives were the same. All they fucking do, all we see, it's like 2 kids. When my kids have an argument, they blame each other. They just blame each other.
Yeah.
It would be nice for one to step up, one to go, yeah, we fucked up here.
Yeah, we should have done that.
Yeah, we shouldn't have done that. Keir Starmer, we shouldn't have put anyone in jail for, tweets unless they would, massively inciting violence or something. Come out and be honest. I think we have that demand. The demand exists in life. We want authenticity from, our media. We want it from our, football players. We don't want people cheating in sports. I think that's going to come from. I hope it comes from politics. I hope we get it.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, again, why I really like Nigel. I really like Rupert. I really like Richard. I think they're they're much closer to the authenticity that we want.
They're good people, and they are ideologues. They've done this out of conviction. You know, I've known Nigel for years now, years, you know, as his right-hand woman back in UKIP. I've known him for so long, and he's really had the shit thrown at him to be proven right. He really has. You know, people have no idea what it's been like for him, because he believes, and he's not doing this, that people sort of say, oh, he does it because he wants the attention. No, Nigel could be earning a lot more money doing, you know, having a far better life, not doing this. He does it because he fucking cares, and he has to. It's almost like a religious calling for him. Same in many respects with Richard Tice. You know, after the Brexit Party, it was Richard Tice who put his own time and money to keep reform on a life support and sort of keep it ticking over, and would say all the time, when is Nigel coming back? Knowing that Nigel would come in and take over leadership. That's being magnanimous. That is duty and service. Same with Rupert. Rupert spent, and in the by-election he fought in the Southwest, and I think even his own election campaign, the generals, he put all the money into it. He went out and fought it because he wants to do so. He sees that the country needs saving. It's very unique, right? And now that reform's, you know, 25% or whatever, oh, all the Tories who lost their seats are going to suddenly go, I've seen the light, I want to be part of reform. No, bad luck. You should have made that decision when there was something to lose, not from your cosy place of I want to get back in because I, the individual, deserve to be elected. Reform now will start attracting people who want in because it's a success. But the people who went and did that from the beginning, before it was a success, who were laughed at, who were chastised, who were ostracised from the beginning, you know, we Brexiteers, we former kippers, we Brexit Party lot, and we early reformists.
You Nazis.
We did it because we believed and we knew we had to do something.
Yeah.
And it's making sure that reform continues to get those people, not the bandwagonists who the Parliament's full of, frankly.
Well, the Overton window has shifted on reform as well massively. I know, I can see from just talking to people, friends, relatives, that it's gone from a silent vote because you're embarrassed to admit it to, oh no, we need these. You know, there's a lot of people now saying you must vote reform. The comments on my YouTube are insane. The amount of people say, like in the Liz Truss one, you just go and search for reform in Liz Truss one. Liz, join reform.
Yeah.
People want a change. Like El Salvador had a hard shift with Bukele. Argentina's had a hard shift with Milei. The US is promising a hard shift with Trump.
That is gonna come.
We will see. We will see.
God intervened and saved that man's life for a reason.
We will see. We have different views on that than you. But I'm saying, but I think the demand is for a hard shift.
Yeah.
And we're not getting a hard shift under the Conservatives. We're getting a hard shit from Labour. But reform is the promise of a hard shift. And I think there's a demand. So we will see.
Yeah.
We will see.
And I'm going to get back in it.
Are you?
Well, I've not been able to. I had to. So basically, I was, speaking at reform conferences, and part of bringing the former Brexit Party MEPs over to reform. And I said to Richard Tyson, his leader, you've got to really go big on culture as well, not just economy. And then, so here's a little secret. I was supposed to be standing in Clacton at one point.
Really?
Yeah. And then it all went a bit quiet. And then, that's why, because Nigel went and stood in Clacton. But at the same time, working for Talk took me off air during the elections because people had complained to Ofcom, oh, she's been connected to politics and now she's presenting in broadcasting. And I'm like, oh yeah, Ed Balls can interview his own wife, but little old me, who was elected for 6 months to a parliament we're not even in anymore 5 years ago.
You need to get rid of Ofcom. Fuck off.
Yeah, isn't allowed. But the thing is, I am still currently a presenter at Talk who are governed by Ofcom. So as much as Talk would love to say, you go and do your politics and you present, and I'm sure they would, their hands are tied as well. So that means my hands are tied.
You could go and do your own thing like this. Like
This is it. I mean, as my situation evolved, my plan is to go back into politics without a doubt.
Before the next election?
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens. I mean, yeah, I will stand in the next election for sure. But if there's something else that happens before then, everyone loves a cheeky by-election. But let's see. That's up to that'll be the decision of Nigel and the leadership of Reform, who they want doing what. But I've never sort of exited politics because I wanted to. I did it because in that situation I actually had to. I wasn't given a choice, but I'm champing at the bit to get back in there.
Right. Is there anything we're not talked about you wish we had?
That feels like when you go to the doctor's surgery, it's like, well, I've got this ingrowing toenail.
Well, do you know what it is? I used to ask it at the end of every interview, and Connor's not a huge fan of the question, but sometimes I just feel like I just want to check there's nothing you wanted to talk about today.
We've covered everything.
We have covered everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
All the conversations you're not supposed to have at the dinner table: religion, sex, politics.
Yeah, I know. It's we'll see what happens when it goes out. Alex, look, great to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
You know, Joe was very kind to set this up, and I appreciate you giving us your time and coming in.
My pleasure.
Yeah, good luck. If you run for election, we'll see where you're at.
Yeah, watch this space.
All right, good luck. Thank you, everyone. Bye.